Are you passionate about the environment? Renewable energy, sustainability, it just makes sense. Do you want to make a career out of your passion? Green building regulations are on the horizon. People want to save money and the environment, but they need energy advisors to show them how. But what about the training? You can be licensed with only 6 weeks of part-time at-home study if you let Blue House Energy and our team of mentors show you the way. Check us out.
Okay, you guys, we are live. Good morning. We've got Shawna Henderson, CEO of Blue House Energy with us. Good morning, good afternoon, Shawna.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm sitting here at 1 o'clock in the afternoon with, I don't know if you can see this, my cool mom.
I love it.
This is given to my kids, and I don't know if they're being real or if they're being facetious or ironic.
Take it. Whatever it is, just take it. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. What's inside the cup, though, is the real question.
It's tea right now because it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon for me, and I
Nice.
have kind of done with coffee, you know.
Yes, by that time. I am too, usually, but I'm drinking, I know you probably can't see it, but I've got our Stanley Park, where we went and had lunch.
Oh, nice.
And it's blue, because I thought I'm drinking out my blue cup because of what you do. So, the name of your
Cheers.
Cheers! So why don't you introduce yourself, Shawna, and we'll get everybody going on here. I'm going to pull up the comments so I can I'll be able to answer any questions.
Okay. Oh,
Ooh, there's background noise.
wow.
I think, oh well, we'll just carry on. So,
Okay.
yeah, just
I'm listening to
introduce-
the recording of everything.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So
it wouldn't be coffee with Carla without technical issues. We all know it, so it's all good. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Shawna.
okay, Shawna Henderson, CEO of Blue House Energy, which is an online training company. We focus specifically on the building industry, specifically on residential, and specifically on energy efficiency and building technology, building science as well.
Right.
And so my background is in all of those things. Started in the industry in 1991. I'll be proud of how old I am.
Yes.
And became an energy advisor and an R2000 evaluator, and then just sort of morphed into this really interesting role where I do a lot of consulting and design work with folks, and then do this training. So, and I do a bunch of research I did a lot of research for CMHC, and now most of the work that I do on the research end of things is with NRCan, Natural Resources Canada.
You are a very busy lady, and I guess what would be the question to ask is what made you get started and want to be in this industry?
That is the question that has a very convoluted and interesting story, at least from my perspective. So I spent a lot of time in high school in the art room and in the theater department of the high school that I went to in Vancouver.
Yes.
In West Van High. And, at that point, if anybody had told me that my life work would be doing technical stuff and working with math, I'd be like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm an artist. But I got out of school, and my initial plan was to go to art college, and then I was really like, but that's not really going to give me skill sets that are practical and useful and will help other people a lot. I mean, art is definitely something that helps people, but it wasn't in my heart something that was super, like the practical part of me really took over.
Right.
And so I went to school, I went to work, I found a couple of jobs, and it was 1990, and I got, last hired, first fired in that, what do they call it? recession
Right.
in the 80s. And then I had enough for EI, and my mom was like, you know, you really need to get a job because you're making me insane.
As a good parent would do.
Yeah. And I was like, but Mom, I'm putting out, you know, resumes here, there, and everywhere. Every week I go out and I try and get some interviews, and there was just none to be had. And she said, well, why don't you just go put up a poster or a flyer at the local laundromat, you know, those things we used to have,
Yes.
and put out a notice to take on alterations and you know, stuff from and repairs to people, because she had taught me how to sew when I was very young.
Right.
And so I did. And so this sounds like it's really off tangent, but this is how I got to where I am. So I became an entrepreneur at the age of 18 because I graduated early from high school, so I was out in the workforce pretty quickly and out of it really quickly as well.
Right.
So I then basically started my own job, my own business. I had a whole series. I've been a serial entrepreneur all my life.
Yeah.
So I started out doing alterations, and then I took some dressmaking courses, and then I took some pattern drafting courses, and then I took some tailoring courses, and then I did a bunch of really interesting things. I had clients for weddings and you know, special events. I did bespoke tailoring for lawyers, and I dressed drag queens.
Very interesting.
All of which was like so much fun and so interesting, and such an incredible experience for a young person to meet such a wide range of people. I mean, you know, granted, it was all
fabulous is what it would be.
It was, you know, granted, I ended up, you know, it was bespoke stuff, so it was very expensive. It was, you know, I didn't work with people who were doing a lot of, you know, who needed clothing. These were all reasonably frivolous. You know, you can tell, you know, maybe a lawyer's suit is less frivolous than a dress for, you know, the bar association banquet, but
right.
So.
Yeah.
And then, so I did a bunch of design work and stuff, and then I moved into doing graphics, because people were looking at all of my drawings for my designs and saying, hey, could you do us a poster for something? And so that kind of morphed into doing graphic design work, and then I've always been a prolific writer, and so I started doing writing for people, doing the copy on flyers. So my business morphed from dressmaking design to graphics and communications. And then I had the one sort of, you know, sort of in my terms, like a muggle job. For 18 months, I was the art director for a building products wholesaler. And I tell you, I was like, after, you know, spending most of my working life as self-employed, working in an office from 8 till 4 was really hard.
I bet.
And so this is where the epiphany happened. I was doing all of these things that had, you know, like clothing is something that people use, right? They need. So that was sort of satisfying my artistic and my practical views. And then, you know, graphics, not such a thing that, you know, that impacts people personally, like clothing. And then I was working with this building supply wholesaler, and I was doing a whole bunch of stuff that was sort of totally antithetical to what I did in my home life, where I had torn up all the backyard in this house that we were in, and replaced the grass with a vegetable garden. And I rode my bike as far as as much as I could, and I took transit, and I was one of those original people who brought their groceries home in a backpack, and all of those things. And yet what I was doing at work was designing packaging for low-end products that were being manufactured in China and Taiwan, and being brought here and being sold. And it was really, I was generating packaging, yet I had this whole disconnect between my personal life and what I did in work. So I almost had a nervous breakdown over it. I went into one of those flotation tanks. I took a day off work. I said, I need to sort out my brain because I'm going to lose it. I took a day off. I went into a float tank, which was an amazing experience. You get to really sort of like settle your mind.
I've heard about them.
Yeah. Yeah, they're fantastic. I love them, and there's a lot in Vancouver, and they're not very expensive. And if you have the opportunity, like, yeah, totally do it. It's a way to really sort of be kind to yourself, because you can't sit there in the tub and it's really quiet, right? Nothing going on. You can't sit there and beat yourself up for an hour,
right?
Because you're gonna explode out of there emotionally. You're just gonna be like, you can't do it. So I came out of that first float tank experience and walked on the beach and had a whole day by myself. And then when my partner at the time picked me up and said, "So, how was your day?" in this kind of like sort of facetious way, I said, "Fine, I'm going to be an architect." And I was like, I hadn't had those words in my head.
Yeah.
They just popped out when somebody asked me the question. And then my cousin, who was a general contractor, said, "Well, that's really cool." This is like, a few days later, said, "Well, that's super cool, but you need to go to school and learn how things go together, because architects don't actually know how things go together." And for all the tradespeople on the line, I'm like, yes. So I said, "Well, cool. Can I come out on your site?" And he said, "Oh, girls, no."
Yes. You've got a few different battles in this, the industry you work in, for sure.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It has been a challenge. And from young women that I'm working with now and interacting with now, the challenges haven't really changed that much.
Yeah.
The fact that there's more of us talking about it is good.
Yes,
but
exactly.
we have quite a ways to go. So I ended up going to BCIT for building technology, and bumped out of that after the first year, because I asked them when we're going to start looking at this new R2000 thing and looking at energy efficiency and passive solar houses, and they said, "Oh, that's not really in our curriculum for year 2. What we're going to teach you how to do is estimate to build, small concrete block buildings." And I was like, well, at 27 years old, I'm not going to do that, because that's not what I want to do. I want to work with people who are doing housing. So I sort of morphed through all of these things, and so that how I got here was the idea that I sort of even thought about as I was trying to figure out what my next move was that I really liked the idea that working with people and their houses, whether it's design or renovation work, there's always a really creative part to it. The puzzle of what people have and what they want, or what they're expecting, and how do you do all of that, and then the layers of the practicality. How do you make it so that people can afford to stay in their houses or can afford to be in a house? The whole environmental part of it, and so I kind of just built off of that. And at some point my mom was like, "Oh my God, are you ever going to finish any kind of piece of education that you've ever started?" And I was like, "I have a path."
Yeah.
And the path is this, and that's how I'm going to go. So I ended up coming out to Nova Scotia in 1990, because I had found some old Harrow Smith magazines. I don't know if you remember Harrow Smith.
I don't remember Harrow Smith.
Okay, so it was very cool. It was like a back to the Landry Groovy hippie granola publication. It was so awesome. I learned so much from it. Like there was things about do-it-yourself blacksmithing. It was a real influence on me. I asked for a subscription to it when I was 16. So, my true path was revealed quite early in my life.
I think what's interesting about your path, and I'm going to just say this, anybody's path that's straight is not, like, I don't know many people who have a straight path.
Yeah.
It's, it's long and winding and curvy, but what I think is cool about your story is you were able to implement your artistic stuff with your work stuff and make it all one.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I think that's so cool. And not follow, like, you have to get that edge, that's a must, you have to be this, and this. Like, you kind of took a piece of everything and put that puzzle all together that made it work for you. And it's working well. like very well.
Yeah, I mean, I am, nationally recognized in terms of what I'm doing, and
Yes.
I'm sitting on 3 national working groups right now.
Yeah.
I am on the board of a couple of organizations, and I just keep getting work.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
I'm
and you
actually
do.
one of the very few people who has a sort of a. So here's the thing. Here's something that I think would be really interesting to talk about. Is this idea of being a generalist?
Mm,
Like, I know a whole raft of stuff about a whole bunch of things, and some of them I have done huge deep dives into, and
yeah.
others I have done shallower dives. But especially when we're talking about the residential construction industry, there are so many, like one of the biggest issues is that we're siloed, right? People do mechanical stuff, they do envelope stuff, they do framing, they do insulation, excuse me. And one of the things that comes to bite us is the fact that we are really, in a lot of senses, isolated. A trade comes in, does their work, another trade comes in and does their work.
Mm-hmm.
And even, now people are sort of turning around and saying we need an integrated design process or approach so that we can have the builder, the designer, the energy evaluator, the people who are out in the field doing the work, the air sealing and insulation work, because those things are the key issues, right? If you don't actually have those trades in the room while you're discussing any significant project, you don't know what you're getting, and you don't know what to ask for. And the people who are going to be doing the key work for the performance of the house then don't know what you expect. They just get a spec list and away you go. And there's documentation of that communication breakdown right across North America.
Well, and I don't think there is enough conversation about building science, and I think for a lot of people, they don't even understand what that means.
Yeah.
People they put their biggest investment probably they'll ever have is their home. They don't understand the flow of that home. They see the outside, they see the pretty stuff, but how that house runs efficiently, it's like we all say that, everybody wants the pretty countertops and they want the nice cabinets and they want the nice paint. But what goes on behind those walls and throughout your house air-wise and energy-wise that's a hard one to talk about with people. And I think it's something we need to talk way more about. And people in the trades need to understand it.
Yeah, because everything, like if you come into an existing house, then everything that you do to improve the energy efficiency in that house, for example, insulation, has a ripple effect because the house is a dynamic system. So every change you make to one thing alters all the other aspects. Excuse me, just a sorry. So it's really important to be able to go into that house, whether you're an insulator or somebody speccing a job, or a renovator or an energy advisor who's coming in to look at how you're going to improve your energy efficiency. If you don't understand how air, heat, and moisture flows work separately and as a package, and how to diagnose what's going on in the house, then you're not offering a whole service. So for homeowners, there's a limited amount of information that people really need. But for those of us who are in this industry, there's a huge amount of information out there that we need to know. And the cool thing about it is if you are, for example, an insulator, there's a massive value add to being able to diagnose a house. And say, so you just don't go in and do a job. And I know that, that sounds really dismissive, and I don't mean it to come out that way, because I know that tons of people who are, associated with your, with this event, excuse me, are qualified and very competent people, but it's the whole industry that needs to level up.
It's
right?
not
So
good
that's not
enough yet.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's what my work is all focused on is how do we level everybody up? How do we bring the capacity of
Right.
the whole industry to the next phase? And we have to do it quickly because the building codes are changing. In BC, we already have the energy or the step energy code in place. National Building Code is changing now. Nova Scotia has 2020 is the first tiered code year for us, but by 2032, so what's that, 12 years from now,
Yeah.
we have to be able to competently build net zero houses, net zero ready houses, because that's going to be code. We won't have the option to not do it. And so what it means is we need to right now short circuit any issues that will cause long-term damage to houses. Right. So if we don't have people on board, then and people don't know what to do and why they're doing it, that's the other key thing for me is why do we need to do this? Here's the reason why. And if you understand why, then you can do your job way better.
Right. So can you explain, because there's people watching also, and I'm going to just say quickly good morning to everybody, and I've seen some of the comments, but like good morning to everybody, we'll get to your comments, we promise. But there are people watching that aren't in the industry, so can you explain what a net zero
house is? Sure.
Yes.
Sure. So net zero means that the building, it could be a house or it could be a commercial building, produces as much energy in a year as it consumes. So you work on the building envelope, so the outside, the skin, the walls, the floors, the ceilings of the building, and you improve the thermal envelope and you improve the air sealing, so you create a very tight, kind of basically you're creating the house as a thermos. And then so the energy required to heat, cool, and ventilate that house goes way down as that's the other part. Oh, domestic hot water. So all the services that you require to keep you comfortable and healthy in the house, those things have been minimized. The loads on those have been minimized. And so then the next thing you do is you look at how much photovoltaics can I put on the house. And photovoltaics are solar electric panels.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so you can have net zero, which is a house that that has the right facing roof, and all sorts of other. There's a few other aspects that you need to put into that house so that it can be net zero. But you can also make a house that's net zero ready. So you make a house that you do all the improvements to the building envelope and the mechanical systems, but you don't put the photovoltaics on because they're still expensive. And not every house, whether it's a new house or whether it's an existing house, will have the right exposure, have the right solar access, have the right roof line to allow it to be net zero. So I've
actually wondered that about when I do see houses that do have solar panels. That has always been my question, like, can everybody do that? How does that work when there's, I guess I relate it in my head to it's got to be sunny a majority of the time to make that happen. That's probably not the case. But yeah, it's always a question that I've always had.
Yeah, so you have to have a roof that doesn't have shading on it. So back up. You have to have a roof that is exposed to the sun. So a roof that is roof face that points north, like say if you had just a straight up gable roof, one side faces south, one side faces north. You wouldn't put the panels on the north side because the sun doesn't shine anywhere on the, when it goes through. And I'm going to do my little, because I always talk with my hands.
Yes, talk with your hands. It's
okay. So sun comes up in the east. Goes through its path, moves across the top of the southern half of the sky, and then it goes down in the west. So you can have this nice sort of quadrant. So if I'm looking straight forward and that's south, we can go to southeast or southwest. Those are the optimal places for a solar installation. or
Okay.
for passive solar windows, so you get lots of solar gain through them. If you go too far to the east, you lose all the good. Usually, there's a lot more sun in the afternoons, especially in the through the evenings in the summer.
Right.
If you go too far west, you end up for the house with too much heat coming in, and maybe you could probably get a decent amount, but you need to have somebody who can actually come and do a bit of a solar site access evaluation.
Oh, okay.
So that's what a contractor or somebody who's a solar installer would do for you. There are a couple of really cool apps that you can get for your phone, so you can actually look at the position of a house, your house, any house. I've got a couple that are free. I could put those into. They're not mine, but I can put the names into
in the comments after. Yeah.
in the comments after. So if anybody wants to look at that, because they're really fun to play with, and it's a really good way to start to sort of understand, those kinds of environmental, like, and I mean when I say that in that context, I mean like the actual environment around you, not green environment.
Right. Yeah.
So you get a better sense of where you are in the world, which is kind of a cool thing, and especially if you've got kids. My kids spent a lot of time when they were little playing with all the apps on my phone. Most of a good portion of which were site related. So they learned there was a couple of measurement tools in there, and the solar site planner thing, and So that's really, so not every house, so to get back to your first point, not every house or building can be net zero, because not every house or building will have the appropriate roof orientation or pitch, so how it's the slope of the roof. And then, a house that has a whole bunch of dormers on the front doesn't have enough space for the panels, but it also, every dormer or chimney or close by tree casts a shadow on the roof, which means that the photovoltaics won't work as well. So you need to do some some analysis on what's around the building as well.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for explaining that, because I have wondered that. I'm like, I don't get, like, how does that work if it's not sunny, if it's like, how does that all work?
The cool thing about PV is it works in cloudy conditions. You don't get peak, it doesn't deliver the peak amount of energy when it's cloudy, but it will give a little bit of a trickle charge or a drip and a drab into the existing or the grid, and on clear full moon nights, you get charge, which is crazy, right? Because it's photovoltaic, right? It's solar electric, or it's light. Photo is light. So it has, if there's enough light on it, it's going to produce some energy. And so that's where like semiconductors and like the whole, that's a whole nother talk, Carla, if you want to dive into all the weeds of what makes that.
Mike and I are working on some stuff, and I think we're going to be able to, we want to do stuff. I won't get into it, but there's going to be a separate thing from A Coffee with Carla that we're going to focus on just strictly business stuff. So like there's going to be ample opportunity to have lots of good conversations. So
cool.
But I guess getting back to the company that you have and what you do for the trades. So you were mentioning to me about, now you and I have talked about this before, where I'm like, we need to get that out there more, and these guys need to know, and these girls need to know, like, how can they do your courses? But maybe explain a little bit about what your courses are and how they can kind of become a part of that and take them, and do they have to go to a class, or is it online? I'll let you explain it.
Okay, so Blue House Energy is all online courses. Well, I'll park the second part of that. but we offer what are called on-demand online courses. So we have one course that's called Construction Technology, and there's 14 modules, which sounds like a lot. It actually ends up being about 6 hours of you listening to my dulcet tones. But it's interactive, and we are going to be producing another version of it in the next year that will be more interactive. But that takes a lot of time and energy and money. So we have to do it in a staged manner. But we have the 14 modules cover everything from what is sustainability to the fundamentals of the building, to air sealing and insulation fundamentals and strategies, to energy issues and mechanical systems and ventilation systems. So there's 14 modules in there. We've broken it out into three different courses as well. So the envelope specialist doesn't deal, it's called envelope fundamentals, and that doesn't deal with anything to do with mechanical systems, except it does deal with ventilation, because if you are air sealing and insulating a house, you really need to consider how you're going to get fresh air into that, into the building.
Right.
And then, so you can take them, they're built so that you can do them in short bursts of effort.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no segment or topic that's over 10 minutes long. So we really thought about, we went through, all e-learning design and all this stuff, and we then sort of had a baptism by fire, and we learned as we went. And what we built out was something that's been really successful, and it's used for mandatory training for builders in Ontario. It's recognized as continuing education credits for Built Green, which is out of Edmonton, you think, and then also for BC Housing for continuing education credits for builders. So out of those modules, we can, there's some that are already broken out into different courses, but we've made it so that it works for people who need what's called just-in-time learning. So you don't need a deep dive into anything at this point. You need to understand the broader picture. So so the fundamentals are, you need to understand building science, and you need to understand how dynamic a house is. Mm-hmm. It's all about what happens with airflows. It's all about what happens to heat and moisture with airflows. It's all about what heat flows do to air and moisture flows, and it's about what moisture does to heat and air flows. And so it's this meshing together of all of these issues. And so I always have this when I do training face to face. One of the things I ask the room is, okay, so who can describe the neutral pressure plane to me? Because if you can't do that, you don't know enough about building science.
Right.
So that's my sort of milestone or benchmark.
Yeah. And everybody is like, oh no.
Yeah. What's that? Never heard of it. But it is sorry, go ahead.
What you're doing, and this is me coming from a very not from the industry person, but how I see it and how I look at it is, if you're going to be an insulator or anything to do with the construction of a home, this is just an added, it's almost to me like it should be the first thing you take, because it's adding to what you're going to be doing, and so you can understand why that is going to do what it's doing for that person's home or building, or
Yeah, exactly.
I know many people just jump in and they train and they do it, and it's the old school way of doing things, but I think
we're not there anymore. We're not.
It's a different day and age, for sure.
Yeah, we're definitely not building houses like your granddaddy did. Mm-hmm. We've passed that in the sort of 70s to early 80s.
Right.
And a whole bunch of things came about in the 80s due to the energy crisis. So that's when we started thinking about houses and energy use, and because people were starting to, not be able to afford to heat their houses, which is a problem in Canada.
Yes.
You know?
The courses are in the States as well. Like, it's not
Yep.
just for Canada. It's in the U.S. as well, just so people understand that too.
Yes, yeah,
So,
we've modified them. It's the opposite of what people usually do. We've Americanized our Canadian
Right.
work, as opposed to people who have Canadianized their American
yes.
work. And while the courses are good for throughout all climate zones, but to be honest, our specialty is cold climate. So anything to cold to a mixed climate is where some people will get a lot more value out of them. But the fundamentals of how building science work remain the same. It's just the impact of things, right? You want to keep heat out or you want to keep heat in.
Right.
And those two things, you do stuff a little bit differently.
Yeah. And I know we also talked about this was probably 2 years ago we talked about this, or maybe even 3, I don't remember, but it was a while back when we talked about doing online courses or taking a course is sometimes intimidating to people, especially in the trades industry, because there is a stigma around that they, they're not smart enough to go to school, or they're not smart enough to take those courses.
Yeah.
When you say something like building science, it sounds like, oh my God, that's a little bit intimidating, but and you and I talked about wanting to get rid of that stigma, because it is not true.
Yeah, exactly.
It is not true.
So here's a good analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Building science is about physics. And people go, oh, holy shit, physics?
Oh,
not me.
I'm out of here.
Guess what? You use physics every single day. Every one of us. Anybody who drives calculates in their heads the vectors that are required to merge onto a highway so you don't kill each other. All physics is.
Oh, I've never thought about it that way.
You know what physics is? Physics is the language to describe those things. It's
never
only
thought of it that way.
All physics is like, not quantum physics. I can't relate. But the fundamental physics, gravity, thermodynamics, and then and speed and velocity. All we're talking about is putting numbers into equations. It's only math. And I know math, people are like, math.
Yeah,
math is just, and math is just a different language. If you can learn to read music, you can learn math. Because music is very mathematical.
Right.
So I had a huge hang up about, being this sort of artsy fartsy chick coming out of high school and being groovy and then doing, clothing design, and what do I know about physics and what do I know about math? Well, actually, I knew quite a bit about math because of pattern drafting, right? Anybody who is in the trades, who is doing, estimates, is figuring out square footage of wall surfaces or, whatever they're doing, you're using math. We use math every single day. So here's a cool thing. Even without thinking about it, most adults use math or do a mathematical calculation between 4 and 10 times a day. If you look at the change in your purse and you figure out, or your wallet, or your pocket. You look at that, you're doing math.
You're doing math.
If you are figuring out how much time you have between, one destination and another, or how much work you could get into play between now and when your kids get off school, or any of those things, you're doing math. Math is just that we have this. So I went to school and I was like, I can't do physics. And I was in this,
Yeah.
this adult ed class in the evenings because I had to get it for a prerequisite to get into this building technology program.
Mhm.
And I was like, I can't do this. And I had this glorious prof who said, he was the person who said, do you drive? Because you're calculating vectors. And I was like, oh, this is,
What a great way to look at that.
Yeah. So here is the cool thing for me. He was like, and I was just like, okay, I understand that, but I'm still bewildered. And he said, okay, so here's a challenge for you. This is your homework.
Mhm.
I want you to go to Ruby Creek, which is up close by Harrison Hot Springs.
Okay.
And you're going to take a drive up there.
Yeah.
And here's the series of equations for speed, velocity, and I think centripetal force, right? Which is like it's how how fast you have to go to skim off the surface of a curve. And I know everybody's going like, what?
What?
So, yeah, I know, exactly, right? So I'm like, what? So he said, okay, so here, go to Ruby Creek. You know that you can get, and so I used to do a lot of driving up into the valley. And so you can get airtime off the Ruby Creek Bridge, or at least you could. So this is going back to, 1990, 89, somewhere like that. So I don't know if the bridge is still the same. I can't vouch for that. But at the time, he said, take your little Datsun 510, drive out there, and when you have a nice lunch or wherever you're going, up the valley. When you turn around, you need to hit the bottom of, or where the bridge and the road start. You need to hit that at 55 miles an hour, and you'll get airtime. And if you don't, you need to go back and into you need to do it again until you get airtime and clock your speed.
I like this homework.
I know. I was like, this is great. So I did, and it was just slightly over 55. But what I had to do for the homework was calculate how, if that's the speed, then you can calculate how much your car and you weigh together, because this centripetal, I think I've got that right, the centripetal equation it's a rule. So physics is a rule. So this is a super cool part about building science, is that everything that happens in a house happens because of a set of physics rules that don't change. You can't screw with them. You can't mess around with them. You can't forget. Right. I mean, when you do try and do that, you end up with massive problems because you have, sorry, my phone just about fell off this thing here. And that's where the problems happen. So we, when R2000 started, there was no recommendation for mechanical ventilation. So, and we're still dealing with that black eye. Oh, houses have to breathe. No, actually, houses don't have to breathe. People have to breathe, and houses have to have adequate ventilation. That's how you save energy. But, people are like, oh, I'm not living in a plastic bag. So, but that was found out very quickly. And there was only a few houses that were built, because what happened was they basically rained inside because there was so much humidity being generated by the people.
Right. Now, that's a very good point, because we're dealing with that where we currently are right now, and we're trying to determine what there's an issue here. So can you explain, that is something people do not think about, is how do that people are putting that into their own home. Now, I know obviously it would be the ones you think of would be boiling water and showering and all of those things, but what are the other, because there's been a couple brought to my attention, I was like, what?
Okay, how about breathing?
Yeah.
Every person, I don't have the number in my head, but it's like gallons of water. We emit gallons of water just by breathing. And then if you breathe hard, or if you sweat because you're doing something, I don't know what you might be doing that might make you sweat in your house, but
I don't know either.
I don't know.
It's very aggressive vacuuming.
There you go. Yeah, that'll do it. Yoga, hot yoga in the house. So everything we do as humans is moisture related, essentially. We breathe, we perspire to cool ourselves down. And then we do things like, boil water. We have showers. And we like the nice hot steamy showers, so we don't use the bathroom fan, or the bathroom fan is too loud, so we don't use it. The range hoods in a lot of houses don't actually vent out. What they do is they recirculate through a charcoal filter, which means that all the moisture is staying in the house. It's not being exhausted.
Right. Gas stove.
Gas stove, yes. Yeah.
That's the one that shocked me.
Yep. Any kind of open flame gas appliance is a moisture generator. Yeah. Aquariums. If you have a lot of plants in your house. What else? Those are the big ones. Where I am here in Nova Scotia, there's a lot of people who burn wood. And so there's been, historically there have been people who've put, 6 cords of wood, wet wood in their basement, and it dries out fantastically, but the house is super leaky, so they don't actually notice it, and then they get the house, they have some air sealing work done on the house, and then all of a sudden they have this problems with humidity. It's because they have 6 cords of wood that's, and it's not clean water either.
Right.
It's nasty.
Yeah. It's interesting because those things I don't think a lot of people even factor any of that really into, because they think, well, I'm a person, like, yeah, okay, whatever, is that going to really affect the air or anything going on in my house?
Yeah.
But
Well,
it does.
but you're not in isolation from the building.
Right.
So if the building or the house has some issues that are, sorry, I just got a cough with it. Sorry.
Good.
If the building, has some dynamics in it that are causing moisture problems anyway, or not addressing potential moisture problems, then you're just a part of a system. And so the system and the whole system is there to benefit you, obviously, as the occupant. That's the only reason we make houses, is to keep people, safe, dry, and comfortable. So of course you become the central cog. You are the sun in this universe.
Right.
And everything that we do needs to drive towards, first of all, comfort and safety. And then energy efficiency. And the cool thing is that if you address comfort and safety, then you have also typically addressed energy efficiency.
Right.
So I turn everything, like a lot of times I turn this all around and I talk about comfort first, because that's their goal. Like most people we're working
that's
with,
what they want. Yeah.
They want to be comfortable. I just don't want to be in this house with these draft, my feet are cold, or I can't use that, the back bedroom without having a little space heater in it, or there's these weird things happening in my bathroom that are, these mold things, these mushrooms that are growing. We want to make sure that we deal with those, and that's what people care about. So the energy efficiency thing in my world has actually sort of taken second place to that. So everything that I talk about that's not technical training is always about how are we going to address your comfort, and safety, and those two things are intertwined. Comfort, health, and safety. Those things are a triad that can't be broken.
Right.
But then the cool thing is that you just get energy efficiency by default, because all the things that relate to comfort, health, and safety also relate to energy efficiency or energy conservation measures.
Right. I know we've got the links to your courses in the comments. Thank you, Mike, for doing that.
Thank you.
I guess I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about, I know you said you spoke at a conference with women in trades, and just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about being a woman in the trades industry and how that's been for you, your experience.
It's been a challenge. Where to begin?
Because we've started, we've started that small group of the badass women in spray foam.
Right.
And we created that group because it was we want them to become more comfortable sharing, talking, and, you know, in the bigger groups, they're there, but they're not as, I think they're interacting a little bit more now.
Yeah.
But
good.
it's that little bit of, you know, like, if I put that out there, it's that not to the fault of really anybody in the group. It is just, I think in general it's a scary thing to post anything in a big group. But it's getting them out of that comfort zone of, we want to hear from you. You guys, like, women in trades, there are a lot of women in trades.
Yeah.
And they need to be heard.
But at the same time, there's not that much. 10% does not mean a lot.
Well,
right?
True. Yes.
So that's an overarching figure in the residential construction industry. That's not it's not that high. So while, you know, we need to get to a tipping point where there is no, you know, where the number of women who are out there in the field makes it so that it's not an issue for anybody to say anything. Not anything, but just to speak up in a group. So my experience was that when I was in school, so I went to school as, so I went to this, I was one of 8 women in a class of 88.
Wow.
So that's, you know, ish 10% maybe. And the first thing that happened when we started out the program was that we had introductory classes to all of our courses, and the structural engineering prof said, "I'd like all the women to stay behind, please." So I'm there with another woman. So I was 27. There was another woman there who was 25, and the other 6 women were right out of high school. All of Keeners, like, I chose to go back to school, right? So did this other older, you know,
older at 25.
Older at 25, and these 6 women who had just graduated high school, and he said, it's a known fact that women are not good at math. So my advice to you is that you figure out which guys are really good at math in this class, and you start dating them, and you stick to them for the whole 2 years. And
wow,
the whole, like, we were just like gobsmacked, right? Like, all of our faces fell to the floor. And I looked around and I was like looking at these young girls, and they didn't know what to do. And I'd already been in the workplace and had been dealt with some harassment stuff. And I just marched my way with all these gals in tow to the dean's office, and I said, "This is intolerable."
Good for you.
And you know, and what the sort of the sidebars to that story are, the 6 young women who had just graduated high school had all graduated top in their class in math. Wow. We had, guess what? The dean of the mathematics department was a woman.
Like, and what year was that?
That was 1990. Nope, hold on. I have to think back. 1989.
Wow.
And I have battled against, you know, like, when I was in other courses, I had to be able to answer a question 120% correct. I had to know all of the ins and outs, all of the, you know, what if scenarios, whereas all the guys in the class got to cruise by at maybe knowing 70%. So, you know, in one sense, what it means is that I can run circles around anybody in terms of building science now, because I had to do that to be heard and to be validated. But nobody should have to do that.
No.
Right? I mean, I might have done it anyway because I'm such a stupid keener.
That's your nature.
That's my MO.
Yeah, that's your nature.
But and I was the only woman in classes for years. I have met, you know, in the time that I was in the field as an energy advisor, one other woman energy advisor, one woman engineer, and all the rest were doing cleanup on sites. That they were the cleaning service on new house builds. even now, I'm on a working group at the national level. There are 45 people on this working group, 45 from across the country.
Mhm.
And so this is the third year that I've been on it. Up until this year, I was the only woman out of 45 people.
Wow.
Like, that's crazy.
That
You
is
can't tell
crazy.
me that there aren't. I know that there are competent women out there because I work with them
Of
all the
course.
time and I deal with
Yeah.
them all the time. But getting people around a table and it's still a challenge. And it was really interesting to me to read a bunch of stuff about the this year's Consumer Electronics Show, where
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you saw all that this week. It was very interesting. Because they took a lot of flack last year for not having any women on any of their panels. And so this year, and they were like, oh, well, we can't find all of these women who have all of this, this, they don't meet our technical requirements and they don't have big, their chops aren't big enough, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this year, CES had a woman as their keynote speaker. Mm-hmm. Which is fantastic, except for who was their keynote speaker? Not a woman in the technology sector. It was Ivanka Trump.
Oh dear. Okay.
So here's lip service again to all of these women in the industry who are like kicking it out of the, not kicking it out of the ballpark, I suppose, if they were really good soccer players.
But yeah, like, and I mean, it's great to have like those women who are of that notoriety, or I don't know what you want to call it, but like the famous people, like, great, those are great. We need people in the industry who, like, the real people that we can relate to, and we know, they're not like out there, up there, over there. We can't touch them. We not touch them. That was a bad choice of words, but you know what I mean. Like, we can. They're real to us. They're tangible. They're real. Well,
and they're also speaking directly, about what is important in the industry, because it was just such a fluff piece that it was, I'm not in that world, but I was really embarrassed by it, by that whole thing. So that was really, there's lots of places where it's exactly the same. So I just always kind of pick up on these things where I'm looking at saying, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I wanted this platform, because I wanted people like you and I and whoever else has come on and who is coming on. We're real people. We know what we're doing. We can talk about it. We're educated. Like, it's.
Yep.
And
well, I gotta say that
to us.
I just know all the, and I think it's partially because of the obstacles that have been in our way, but most of the women who are in this field are kick-ass. Like, beyond kick-ass, because that's what it takes to make it. And I think it's going to be probably a few generations until that edge wears off, right? Unfortunately. But we really need to, we are already in the trade shortage right across North America. And we need to escalate how we get women into the trades globally, right across the board, whether it's heavy machinery or residential construction, whatever. And the bigger thing is we need to be able to retain them, because there's a whole raft of women. Like, I work with this organization called Women Unlimited here. I'm associated with them, and they help women choose the pathway that they want to use or to go down for their trades training. And then they have a whole bunch of backstopping to keep them in the trades, because sometimes there's very toxic, abusive work environments. And so, from my point of view, we need to tackle that as well. And one of the ways that we can do that is by getting more women bosses out there.
Yes.
Right? Like, in my world, the teams that I work with, there's a bunch of women, but we work really differently than teams that I'm on, where there's a primary male cohort. my project manager is like an expert in diversity training.
Right. Yeah.
You know, we have a lot of really gifted people out there, and we just need to, you know, tap into them and say, it's okay. You can, you know, like not just say it's okay. It has to be made okay for people to, you know, for women to be on site.
Yes.
And to be acknowledged as the person who is the leader or is the decision maker. And those are two very different roles. You can be a leader, but you may not be the decision maker.
Right.
So those roles, you know, that's where we need to also have women in trades.
Right.
At that layer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really proud of the fact that this month is all women coming on here.
Yeah.
So we're going to start, because it's all, and I mean, it's been awesome. Everybody that's come on has been incredible, and everybody is always welcome back anytime. But the women have been not as, like, you guys, like, come on and let's talk. Like, come on. And it's not, I don't even know that they're nervous to come on and talk. It's just, I don't know if they feel like what am I going to act, like, what do I have to say, kind of, and there's so much to say. And I'm excited that you know, last week I felt bad because Haley from Cupslanger was going to be on, and she's just, you know, a young mom, and she started her own business, and she's just, and I ended up being sick, so we're rescheduling her. But I'm so proud that you ladies have stepped up and come on, that we get to talk to you, because it's, you guys you have so much to add. So much to add.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate the opportunity to you know, to talk with you and to have more of an audience for what I'm involved in, and let other people, not just women, but men and women, other people in general, know that there are challenges. And, you know, these, you know, I have tons of privilege because I'm a white middle class woman.
Yeah.
And so I am really clearly aware of, or, you know, I know I have blind spots in that.
We all do, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the key, right? Is to acknowledge where the blind spot. You know, yes, I know I have blind spots. I may not know where they all are, and but to be allies to people who don't have as much privilege is really important, and to just consistently be lifting people up.
Right.
Right. That's my MO in the world, is how do I lift people up? How do I make it so that people are comfortable with exploring with curiosity what this particular part of the world is?
Yes. And I love that. It's about lifting people up. It's not about it's not competition. It's, if we all lifted each other up, we can be so strong, and we can change things, and we can make things happen that we want to be the change in the world. Yeah. Let's be that change, and let's lift each other up by doing that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and to do that means that you have to, you know, the caveat on that is that you have to understand what your privilege is.
Yes.
Right. If you're in a place where you can lift people up, you have privilege, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And to ensure that you're doing it in a respectful way.
Right.
You know, listen to the people who need you who can benefit from you lifting them up, as opposed to, you know, parachuting in and saying, "Oh, I can fix that for you."
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I mean, and I think that's a whole nother topic that
it is, because that's such an easy, like, you know what, I can just do it. I'll just do it. Yes, so easy to do.
Yeah.
It's that, no, I'll let you do it. Ooh. But yeah, that's very good points made there. So we are just over an hour. So I think you're going to come back for sure. We've got to have you back, because there's lots to talk about on many topics. I did want to ask you, though, too, outside of all of this, you also do a little bit of, you sing.
I do.
You're in you're in a group, or are you in a quartet? I've forgotten.
I was singing with a professional flamenco group.
Right. That was it, yeah.
Yeah. I had to step down from that because running two businesses means that I don't have very much time, and I have a household, and I have kids, and I have a partner, and and a big garden. So,
yes.
I had to step down because it was a professional group, and I just couldn't I couldn't maintain the caliber that they needed.
Right.
And I felt really, I kind of dumped out of that after I did about 6 months worth of performances with them, and I just was like, I'm starting to really get aggravated and anxious about this, and I can't keep up with new material, and that was also a really hard thing because it's not like I came out of singing in choirs. I sang in choirs for decades.
I didn't realize it was a professional group.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's a huge commitment for sure.
Yeah. But that's something that is I think we're going to Spain for Christmas this year, so we'll be there for
nice.
I think. So I'll be able to just be able to do that. But that was it was very cool. Thank you for bringing that, because it was very, very, very cool kind of experience. And in terms of finding a voice, very interesting for me, because having been a choir singer, I was always listening to all the voices around me, so that you want to be one unit, right? And then singing solo with a guitar and giving cues to a dancer. Now I'm directing things. I was like, it's a big job to be a cantora for a flamenco group. It's like, because you're driving the bus. You're like, everybody is relying on you to do a bunch of things. But it was very cool to in terms of finding a voice and not being, not that I'm scared to speak in a room, but it was something that really helped me in terms of confidence of being able to just, out of nowhere, big volume, fill up a room with my voice.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so, I think everything you've done is it's so interesting to me, because you pieced it all together, and it works so beautifully for you and for everything you're doing. The artistic and the business, because I've always said often, and this is now, you've just blown that totally out of the water, what I've always said. I'm like, people that are like kind of hippie-ish, they can't be in business, because it's like it's like they are they're the total opposites of each other. You've just changed that whole. You've just blown.
You know what?
Like, I'm a big fat liar.
But Carla, you know what? I think there's also this thing that we are taught through our lives. It's just like, that being smart means that you're a good book learner, that being a scientist means that you're not creative. But everything that has been a breakthrough or an invention or an aha moment in science is all about creativity. It's all about letting your thoughts loose and saying, what if? So scientists and technical people who make technical, who are in technical worlds and find solutions for technological problems are incredibly creative.
Yeah.
And I think we all sell ourselves this great disservice. When we sell ourselves short, it's a great disservice to say that I'm only technical or I'm only a business person. Good Lord, woman, you know how creative you are in terms of being an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs you're creative.
Never really I've never connected those two things. And, because I've always, you relate, oh, you're artistic. Oh, you're business minded. Oh, you're good with numbers. Oh, you're good with writing. It's always those title things.
Well, we always want to pigeonhole. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same as when we talk about it, like the online learning. We talk about things like learning types, which is in some places has been debunked. But nobody is only learns best through reading. So you have reading. So you have this thing called acronym VARK, VARK, visual, auditory, reading, and kinesthetic. So the kinesthetic means that you learn by doing.
Got it. Okay.
So there's those four broad areas, and there's a whole school of educational design that works with, you're either this or you're that, or you're primarily this or you're primarily that.
Right.
And that's not true for anybody. I mean, there may be, people, there's going to be people at at all ends of the spectrum, but for most of us, we learn in a variety of ways, and we learn best with a variety of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So, whether it's, and so the same thing is like, you're not just a numbers person, and you're not just a business person, you're not
Mm-hmm.
just an artistic person. There are
Mm-hmm.
all these things that, sometimes they pop up and sometimes they fall down, and sometimes they stretch out to, whatever this might be. Oh, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always look at life as being something, everything that has happened to me in my life has been, the challenges.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to see what makes me more radically human out of this experience.
Mm.
Right? So it's
Right.
what makes me a person who would be willing to step out on stage and sing in Spanish, and I don't know what Phrygian mode is, and I don't actually know what I'm saying, so I have to pull
Right.
everything apart phonetically and then put it back together again so I can sing the sounds, and then I have to figure out what's making sense in terms of how I emote this music.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what
Yeah.
do you do that? Like, that's kind of a crazy challenge. So,
Right.
I try and every time I get uncomfortable with something, I think, okay, good, this means I'm going to learn something. So instead of being, there's been times in my life where I've been like, no, that's too uncomfortable. Some things are very uncomfortable, and if they make you creeped out and weird, don't do them.
Right. Yes.
But to push just slightly out of your comfort zone and know that it's just for those moments, right? Like I was on, I spent hours and hours and hours practicing for flamenco, and literally spent minutes on stage for those 6 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so only for those moments is it a pinch point. Everything else is, practice and thinking things through and stuff like that. So it's,
Yeah, it is, it's that thing that there isn't, you don't just get somewhere right now. It's a lot of stuff to get to that few minutes on the stage or whatever it is that everybody's doing, right? So, but I really am so happy you came on, and I want you to come back. And is there anything you want to say to kind of wrap everything up?
I have put a discount on all of the courses, both in the U.S. and the Canadian sides of our online shop.
Okay.
So 30% off anything that anybody buys between now and midnight tomorrow, midnight Pacific time. And all you need to do is put in the name Carla when you get to the shopping cart, and I will also in the comments put in the direct links so people don't have to look for that.
Great.
So boot around in them and see what you think. I'm always looking for feedback, and so tell me what you think about them.
If they have questions, can they message you or email you, or how?
Absolutely.
What's the best form to get a hold of you?
Probably the best form is to message me. So and if it comes through Facebook, then I know where people are coming from, as opposed to lots and lots of emails in my box, and sometimes I don't. I pay attention to everything, but sometimes I put them in different priorities.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again.
Well,
and
thank you so much.
I see there are some comments on here, so we'll go back and answer those questions and stuff. But everybody that tuned in and commented and added to the conversation, thank you so much as well. You guys are awesome, and we will see you all next Saturday. Bye for now.
Cheers.